Hey guys, it's Sam. Welcome to BNS About Movies. This episode is all about Horror Gives Back, which is one of my favorite times of the year. I love the podcast Unsung Horrors, and once a year, they get people writing about horror movies. It's every October. It's a month of themed movies, and the money always goes to Best Friends Animal Shelter, which works to save the lives of dogs and cats across America, giving pets second chances and happy homes. I love Best Friends. They send great magazines to us also. Best Friends, beyond having a 4-star Give with Confidence rating from Charity Navigator, started in England as the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which was founded by Marion McLean, who is married to former church member and Best Friends Animal Society co-founder Gabriel DePayer. I love the Process Church. If you ever saw my wrestling gear, I had a Process logo on it. But yeah, the Foundation Church relocated animals from its Arizona ranch to Utah and then was renamed the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. And now it's a no-kill animal shelter that works all across the country. So anyway, there are 31 movies. We're going to get through the first 15 or so here. And then there'll be another episode so that I can get back to some of the other ones. So I'm going to go through my picks and tell you what I liked. Hopefully you have some picks as well. I'd love if you share them with me. You can send me an email at bnsaboutmovies@gmail.com or come to my site, bnsaboutmovies.com. And go back and listen to the episode of Unsung Horrors that I did with the guys. It was a blast. It was like a dream come true getting to be on the podcast. The first movie and first category, Universal Horror, and that movie is The Mummy's Curse.
Who's carries?
It's so hard to explain. Sometimes it seems as if I belong to a different world.
Hey, looks like the imprint of a man's body. A big man, too.
Unless I'm mistaken, a mummy was buried here.
The fifth entry in Universal's original Mummy franchise, this is a direct sequel to The Mummy's Ghost, as Karis, played by Lon Chaney Jr., and his beloved Princess Anaka, Virginia Christine, have remained in a swamp. Even if the swamp somehow moved from Massachusetts to Louisiana, and the accents don't always sound right. Southern Engineering Company, it's a New Deal kind of public works project, right? Wants to drain the swamp, but the locals are afraid of even going in there. And sure, they're poor, but would you want to deal with a mummy, much less two? The Scripps Museum sends Dr. James Halsey, Dennis Moore, and Dr. Ilzor Zandab, Peter Coe, to investigate, just as a worker is killed with all the hand marks of Prince Karis. But never trust science, as Zandab is really a priest of the pharaohs and is working with Ragib, Martin Kozlek, to fully return the Egyptian royalty to life within the mucky confines of this deep southern bog. Thus follows Brewing the Tea Leaves, Killing a Monk, and Karis Rising, filled with power anew. Anaka also rises, being found by a bulldozer and washing herself clean. She's found by beloved local Cajun Joe, Kurt Catch, and of course,
recent victims include local favorites, the Hutchinson brothers.
My brother is dead. He broke his neck and then he drowned. Why? I mean, one minute we're laughing, the next minute he's dead. Why would God let this happen?
Taken to the local bar before Karis busts in and starts killing everyone. She's found by Halsey and Betty Wash, played by Kate Harding, and are shocked by how much she knows about ancient Egypt. Me, I was shocked finding out how much English she can speak. Of course, as it always does, evil scientists push their luck and the mummy ends up dead again. Directed by Leslie Godwins, this had a huge list of writers attached, including Bernard Schubert, Leon Adams, Dwight V. Babcock, Ted Richmond, and Oliver Drake, who would go on to make another mummy movie that I love many years later, and with a much lower budget, The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals, which outside of the Las Vegas setting feels like it could be a sequel to this movie. There's one Universal Mummy movie left, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, but Joe Dante and Famous Monsters Volume 4 Number 3 wrote this was one of the most disappointing horror films the studio would ever release, packed with footage from the mummy and the mummy's hand instead of new scenes. Between the stock footage and stuntmen stand-ins for the occasionally or often drunk Lon Chaney Jr., the mummy is played by at least 3 people, including Boris Karloff and Tom Tyler. But I love this movie. The swamp's a fun place as we follow the timeline of these movies, with the mummy's tomb being set in 1970, the mummy's ghost 2 years later, and 25 years after that, this movie takes place in 1997. It does not feel like the 1997 I lived in.
Oh, glorious Son, accept our sacrifice, that we may be fruitful once again.
The second movie is a sequel, and that's The Wicker Tree from 2011. Yes, The Wicker Man is a classic, a film that I watch several times a year and one that I get something new out of with each viewing. And there's a reason why I never watched The Wicker Tree, but I finally powered my way through it, and somehow it's even worse, but strangely better than I thought it would be. Then again, in Ecclesiastes, I can't pronounce biblical names, 7:15, the very idea of such conundrums is brought to light. All things I've seen in the days of my vanity, there is a just man that perished in his righteousness, and there's a wicked man that prolongeth his life in wickedness. Well, this is directed and written by Robin Hardy, the very same man who made the original. And it's about Cowboys for Christ, Betty Boothie, Britannia Nicole, and her boyfriend Steve Thompson, Henry Garrett, bring their born-again evangelical Christian music to the godless, first in Glasgow and then Tressock, where a nuclear power plant has made everyone infertile. The couple are barely there for a minute when Steve neglects their promise rings and swims nude, and then makes love to Lolly, played by Honeysuckle Weeks. A village girl reveals that most of the town worships the ancient god Sulis. As the town prepares for May Day, a detective named Orlando, played by Alessandro Canetta, is investigating things. And the town is run by town elder Sir Lachlan Morrison, played by Graham McTavish. Our protagonists agree to be the lady and laddie of the May Day parade, which means that Steve is chased by an entire village and torn apart by naked men, while the music sounds like a remix of Can You Read My Mind from Superman, while Beth tries to escape. She ends up stuffed in a case. Wally has Steve's child, and the village is saved. Christopher Lee was supposed to play Morrison, but he was injured on a film set. He does appear in a flashback as a mentor, who Hardy claims was Lord Summerisle. Lee disagrees and said the characters aren't related. Joan Collins was to play his wife, dream casting Joan Collins and Christopher Lee together, but when the younger McTavish was cast, so was Jacqueline Leonard as Delia Morrison. The cook Daisy, however, is the same Daisy from the first movie, also played by Leslie Mackey. The title of this film was changed several times, from The Riding of the Laddie, Mayday, and Cowboys from Christ, which is the name of the book it's based on. But they ended up with The Wicker Tree, hoping that people would connect the two movies. Hardy was still trying to make one more movie, The Wrath of the Gods, before he died. This movie feels more like a sequel to the Nicolas Cage film than Hardy's own, with a bombastic score, near digital direct-to-video looking cinematography, and characters that are stupider than misguided. I really couldn't believe I watched it the whole way through. I'd like to say it felt like an Italian ripoff of the first, but that would mean that it was good. Kind of like how Patrick Still Lives is a million times better than Patrick. This is anything but a good movie. The third film is for the Philippines, and it's Maligno from 1977. Celso Ad Castillo made Patea Sin, oh man, I can't pronounce English, much less, another language, but Bataan Sa Sindak Si Barbara, Let's Fight Barbara to Death before this, a film where Barbara gives up a lover to her sister Ruth and leaves the country, only for her sister to kill herself, which brings her back home. This film has a lot of the same cast members, but instead of a story of possessed dolls and sisterly warfare, this has a satanic cult come from the unborn child of Paolo and Angela Cortez. Susan Roses, who played Angela, won the famous Best Actress Award for this movie. They already have one child, Yvonne. They're about to have another, but Lucas Santander, Eddie Garcia, may be in prison, but when he has an interview with Paolo, who's played by Dante Rivero, he's the one asking the questions, getting inside his head and explaining how he can help him. Soon, the Antichrist is in his wife's womb, as reported by cult member Bianca, played by Celia Rodriguez, and before you can say Rosemary's Baby by way of The Omen, this goes so far that the father tosses his daughter off a roof to her demise. By the end of the movie, Angela's screaming at God, "I can't take it. Your tests anymore. I don't care." Her rejecting the Lord is a massive act of heresy in the Philippines, a country that is almost 80% Catholic. We never see if God saves her, only a square up reel that shows a mass and says that Jesus will come. That said, this is a pretty good horror film, despite the language barrier that comes up at times. In 2008, it was remade as part of the Sinceri Presents the Susan Roses Cinema Collection, along with several others of her films. The next one is Birth Year, and I was born in 1972. I'm old. But The Curse of the Headless Horseman, man, that's worth it.
And another bloody chiller.
A quiet town, nestled in the California foothills. A timeless place where past and present merge. Curse of the Headless Horseman. Violence rages as an age-old curse comes to life, leaving death in its trail. Terror and a new excitement explodes on the screen. Curse of the Headless Horseman. Coming to this theater soon. Rated PG.
The legend of the Tamal Moon informs a bunch of hippies that the longer they stay, the greater the chance that a headless horseman searching forever for 8 gunfighters will appear to them all. But hey, Mark, played by Marlon Proctor, inherited this place from his Uncle Callahan. He's got 6 months to make a profit, so he gathers up all his hippie buddies and decides they're going to put on Wild West shows, because we wouldn't have a movie otherwise. If he fails, Solomon the Caretaker, played by B.G. Fisher, who is at once the old man that warns everybody in a slasher and a Scooby-Doo villain, gets the ranch. It is beginning again. It is beginning again. It is beginning again. The story will be told, but non-believers are doomed. That is what he tells them. This is a film that teaches us that pizza is the nectar of the gods. A narrator says things like, remember childhood innocence and freedom? Remember it, for it is gone now. A hippie girl freaking out very, very badly on acid.
I freaked out very, very badly. Freaked out on acid.
And the Day for Night having its own freak out along with her. A sexual assault soundtrack by a cover of Bob Dylan's You Ain't Going Nowhere. Improv theater. The blood-drinking Baroness Isabel Collin de Fresnay, who shows up with a Superman lunchbox. And holy cow, that's factory superstar Ultraviolet. Ah, man. That hippie girl who was freaking out before gets attacked by the Headless Horseman, who swings his own head at her, which covers her in blood while she seemingly has an orgasm. And at the risk of making this more of a run-on sentence, an amazing twist ending. Director John Kirkland also made pornography in Hollywood, while writer Ken Reach only made this. It's a mess, but a wonderful mess. A movie that starts stupid, gets stupider, and gives you moments of artistic brilliance, and you wonder, how did we get here? Hell Spa is next, and that was the 1990s theme. If Killer Workout and Death Spa were enough for you, how about Hell Spa, shot on video 90s movie that has the best line I've heard in a long time. There's someone out there, and they stole my beans. A woman is stalked and killed, at which point we see a computer monitor tell us that her children, Maggie and Marcia, have to also be murdered, so there aren't any loose ends. Mr. X is such a strange character. He buys into mom and pop shops by giving people their fondest dreams, then begins to kill their customers and finally the owners, like a combination of needful things and how Blockbuster treated your favorite local video store. No one remembers that. Blockbuster feeds you nostalgia, and they're the beasts that ruin mom and pops. So I don't miss them at all. Mr. X is kind of like a vampire or a man in black or a demon, or the movie never really explains his plan of buying auto parts stores and gyms. It's an odd, satanic, kind of vertical business strategy, but it seems like he's getting somewhere with it. The Hell Spa, the title, is owned by Rona Benson, an older woman who's losing ground to a corporate gym that destroys every small workout place in its way. Mr. X shows up and has an interesting plan. He will save her gym. He will make her look young again, and she can sign people up for a gym for free to lose weight as long as they sign up for life. Plan X, as it's called, is on all the scales in the form of stickers, which seems kind of low budget for someone who's either a monster from another dimension or a higher demon, but who am I to tell Mr. X how to do what he does? Catherine Clark is the editor of a local newspaper that no one likes, other than to write letters telling her how bad the newspaper is. She learns about the spa when her friends, Maggie and Marcia, who we talked about before, go missing. There's a whirlwind of plot here as Mr. X buys out one of her reporters, Doyle Shakespeare, by giving her the mental illusion that her sick mother has gotten better, all where Catherine falls for the hunky but kind of dumb Rousseau appears computer guru Ken Brock. Then Mr. X takes those two off the board and even cuts the finger off because he didn't lose enough weight of the owner of the print shop that the newspaper comes out of, Roque Jarvis. Catherine becomes in deep with this conspiracy that is swirling around her city, and this kind of feels like they live a little bit at this point. Mike Bowler, who directed this, was also behind Things, not the Canadian one, and its sequel, as well as writing Fatal Images. Oh yeah. The co-writer of this was Dennis Devine, who's been making movies since Fatal Images, like Dead Girls, Things 2, Vamps in the City. If you like the theme from Dead Girls, Good News, you're going to hear it again in this movie. Mr. X has some great speeches. One is, God made a fatal error when he gave men free will. He says, after showing her that large computers from another time and place, these computers from the 90s would fit into your phone these days, are behind his empire. Then he giallo kills a writer by stabbing her in the brain. This gets wild as there's an underground lair filled with computers, as if this has been a Halloween 3 cover movie, except it's really about how Walmarts and Dollar Generals were strip mining towns across America, putting up stores every 2 minutes until anything unique or special has been ripped away while taking what they need, whether that's money or blood or soul. There's some big ideas for a micro-budget shot-on-video horror movie, and maybe I'm filling in the holes with my own brain as I savor this. But you have to love a bad guy who says things like, I am the dark in every man's soul, before describing how he will use sin to unite the entire world. Also, this movie is way longer than it needs to be, yet I wanted it to last another hour. You might find it kind of drags, but I could live in the world of Hell Spa for a long time. In 2000, Bowler took footage from this and made Club Dead, which is almost the same movie, but now it has Tommy Kirk as a cop. This is a movie that I can't help but applaud. He should have remade it with little bursts of footage every every few years, like a satanic small business Star Wars prequel. On the 6th, the theme was vampires, and darkness is the next movie.
Somewhere in the heartland of America, an evil has awakened.
If he catches us, we're all dead.
Born to create an army of the undead.
Hey!
Unless it is stopped,
Nobody is going to hurt you.
it will take our towns.
You're wrong.
It will consume our cities.
We're already dead.
It will rule the earth. No one will be safe. No soul will be spared. There will be no escape. Pray to die before they eat you alive. Leaf Yonkers, Darkness, the Vampire Virgin.
There are so many vampire movies, you might think that everything has been said about bloodsuckers. You might be right. And then you watch Darkness and realize that no one has even scratched the surface of what can be done with vampires since this was made in 1993. Made by Leif Jonker for $5,000 or so in Wichita, Kansas. This movie does more with its time and budget than pretty much any 90s horror film did with Millions. Working with effects artist Gary Miller, who also plays the vampire hunter Toby, it's as if this movie wondered, can we blow things up and have so much blood that it feels like your TV screen is leaking? From the moment a terrified person runs into a convenience store and tries to explain that everyone is going to die, until a conclusion that has numerous bodies festering with blood, pustules, and goo before exploding into a plasma-soaked storm. This is like what Slayer did, raining blood live from start to finish. It never slows down, battering you with non-stop scenes of carnage. Jonker started this when he was 17 and came back a few years later. He had the kind of crew working with him that would sell their blood to make it happen. Toby meets up with some teens and they use shotguns, chainsaws, holy water, drills, whatever it takes to destroy Liven and the plague that he has brought to this small town. I've read some reviews that say things like this has no stories, and you know what? What movie did these guys watch? This is lo-fi gloriousness on the grandest of scales, was grand as $5,000 can be. When I thought about that plague that would eventually destroy humanity as a teenager, it wasn't me sitting in my house and people arguing about wearing a mask. It was bloody skeletons screaming at the sun, 7-Elevens filled with blood, and hot metal girls in Iron Maiden shirts trying to kill me. I wanted the end times to feel like darkness. This movie is metal as fuck. It made me so happy I was cheering. I almost cried. I loved it so much. Really, why did I take so long to watch this movie? It's like a film that crawled in my head, ate most of my brain, used the blood and fluids inside my skull to fill a gravity bong, laced it with PCP, forced me to smoke it, and then made me watch it as I succumbed to the bloody abyss that it killed me with. 200 stars out of 5. Up next, I'm going all in on Mummies, the Pharaoh's Curse.
Let ye who seek to disturb the eternal peace and sleep of the Royal One, beware.
It came from the dead, terrorizing the world with a mystic power centuries old. It feeds on blood. It kills for a cat goddess, the seductive embodiment of an avenging ancient evil. Pharaoh's Curse.
You know, King Diamond once sang, now if you break the seals and disturbing the peace, then you start up a curse. Bring an evil disease, don't touch, never ever steal, unless you're in for the kill, or you'll be hit by the curse of the pharaohs.
Yes, you'll be held with the curse of the devil.
Maybe King wasn't singing about off-brand Mummy movies, but man, I love mummies unconnected to the universal horror Mummy, yet totally want them to all fit in the same universe. I am obsessed with Mummy movies. Lee Rollum Sholem has so many credits from Superman and Tarzan movies and shows to directing Criswell's TV series. And the movies Tobor the Great, Mom Pa Kettle at Waikiki, love that movie, Hellship Mutiny, and probably a few thousand other movies. There are so many urban legends about his work, like how Phyllis Coates got knocked out on a Superman episode. He woke her up and shot all of her scenes for the day before her face started to swell up. Or how he kept bringing the same attractive blonde to be the new Jane in a Tarzan movie, only keep getting turned down by producer Saul Lesser, only for that girl to end up being Marilyn Monroe. Who cares if that story is true? It's a great story. But hey, we're here for mummies. Welcome to Egypt, cradle of civilization, home of mummies. A bunch of scientists are digging where they shouldn't, which means that Captain Storm, played by Mark Dana, has to save them. Maybe even pull a John Ashley with one of the smart guy's wives, Sylvia, Diana Brewster, who was Miss Canfield on Leave It to Beaver. Or maybe he can get with local Samaria, Zivo Rohan, who played Nefertiti on Batman, and Venus Divyasa in Macumba Love. How wild is it that this mummy... is really someone transformed into a mummy, and it drinks blood, and it can live without an arm. It is the best mummy. Shot in 6 days, one in Death Valley. It's the kind of movie that also has a cat monster and then kind of forgets it. I mean, it's an hour long. Some people review it or expect them to make out with them or something. Perhaps you've never seen a 50s generic monster movie and we're expecting this to fit in your Criterion collection. I mean, it has the tomb of Pharaoh, Ra, and Tef defined, the disintegrating marriage of Sylvia and Robert Quentin, played by George Neat, and a possession film lurking inside the bandages of a mummy movie. Poster says a bloodlusting mummy that kills for a cat goddess. That's good enough. El Enigma del Atad is our next movie, Only a Coffin, also known as The Orgies of Dr. Orloff, a much better title, and it represents Spain. Howard Vernon wasn't supposed to play Dr. Orloff in this, but once you realize it has all the same locations, this is the awful Dr. Orloff, and everybody just wanted to be Dr. Orloff again, he probably was like, all right. He gathers all of his equally horrid relatives to his castle and tells them he's dying of cancer. P.S. He spent all of the family money. That said, he's insured himself for millions of dollars and tells them that only one of them can get it, and then he kills himself in front of them. This would invalidate the insurance, but well, let's just go with it. The family covers it up in time for nephew Daniel to get into bed with his secretary and his poor innocent wife Greta to discover them. Dr. Orloff's body disappears as it's a giallo, and then Greta discovers that she's found his body before it comes back to life and attacks her. Only Paolo, Daniel's brother, believes her, so when he digs up Orloff, he finds his brother's body and something else. This is a dead body that is not Dr. Orloff. As you would expect, Dr. Orloff is using this night to kill everyone. Would we expect anything less? Well, little as this is a Santos Alisar movie, who also made El Colonista de Cadáveres, which was released in the US as Cauldron of Blood, which means it's fine, but if Jess Franco made it, it would have lived up to that Orgies of Dr. Orloff name. But they tried. They added inserts, BDSM inserts of a masked man and 3 naked women being tortured in scenes that have nothing to do with the plot. I love this idea and wish that movies I had no interest in watching but have to, holiday movies, romantic comedies, horror movies made after 1981, all had random moments of gratuitous nudity and non-sex sex. It makes them so much more interesting. Young people that are like, why do the movies have to have sex? You're getting it wrong. Inserts are where it's at. The next movie is The Unsung Horrors Rule, which is under 1,000 watched. This one's 708 as of now on Letterboxd, and it's Piranha Mandir. The Ramsey brothers, there are 7. This is by director Tulsi and writer Shyam. Made India's first horror TV show, Z Horror Show, as well as the movies that include Makal, Bon Dorwaza, and Vrina. Hundreds of years ago, the procession of Raja Hiraman Singh, the procession of Raja Hiraman Singh is stranded near the Black Mountain, leaving him concerned that his daughter, Princess Rupali, has been taken by devil worshipper Samri. He arrives just in time to save her as Samri starts to take her soul, turning her eyes white and then red. The Raja orders him to be beheaded, but before he dies, he said, so long as my head is away from my body, every woman in your line shall die at childbirth. And when my head is rejoined to my body, I will rise and wipe out every living person in your dynasty. Thakur Ranveer Singh, the great-great-grandson of the Raja, knows of this curse as his wife died giving birth to his daughter Suman, who he is angry with. And she's dating a non-royal college boy, Sanjay. Her father reveals the curse to them to get them to break up, but they stay together and go on vacation with Anand and his wife Sapna, where they find a painting of the evil Satanist Samri. Behind this painting is his torn off head, which of course they screw up and put back on his body, bringing him back to life. Thakir comes to the rescue and he performs an Aarti, A-A-R-T-I, is that Aarti, a prayer with rhythmic waving a lamp to create a spiritual connection between the worshiper and the divine to Lord Shiva. Using a Trishul, the trident of Shiva, they defeat the monster and burn him alive, which finally allows our hero and heroine to be married. Then again, Samri would return pretty much in the same year in Samri 3D. This also stars Anirudh Argawai. Man, these names. Is the demon, a man who basically walked into Ramsey's office and they jumped up and down as they'd spent months looking for the person to play Samri. The music in this is inspired by the Amityville Horror, and it is the same theme song that was used on Z Horror Show. The next theme is Michael Ironside, and that brought me to Black Ice from 1992. It's early fall as I tell you this, and the last thing I want to think about is snow or icy roads, and here I am watching a movie shot in Winnipeg where huge snow piles are all over the place. And this is called A Passion for Murder in the UK and stars Russian actress Joanna Pakula as Vanessa, a government agent who is sleeping with a married politician named Eric Weaver. After they have a fight, he's killed when she shoves him out a window, and she has to go on the run. She's left out in the cold by her Black Ops bosses. The only one that can help her is Ben Noor, played by Michael Norrie, a cab driver. Directed by TV director Neil Fanley and written by Olsen and John Allen Schwartz. The main reason I watched this was Michael Ironside, who plays Quinn, Vanessa's boss, who tells her that she's a loose end and needs to be killed. Ben is an author who can't get a break. He's driving taxi from Detroit to Seattle, all on back roads to get away from him. Those roads are all in Canada, and man, are they cold and boring. There's also a sex scene in a rest stop where Norrie bends Pakula over a sink and someone actually walks in. The real star in this is Michael Norrie's fake long hair. It looks like they threw yarn at him and just gave up. You can't stop looking at it. I just wanted Ironside to kill everyone. John Allen Schwartz has really used a few other names. One is Conan Lestelaire. The other is Alan Black. If you've seen the Faces of Death movies, you recognize those names. Yes, he is the creator of Faces of Death, and he wrote this. It's not good, but I mean, kind of cool that the guy that did Faces of Death wrote this movie. The Ghosting from 1992 is for the Ghost theme. This film's director and writer, Walt Hefner, got out of the Air Force and went right into working at Spokane, Washington State Theater. He worked hard and eventually owned his own theaters, and in 1972, he opened the Starlight Drive-In. Hefner showed some pretty great triple features, such as I Spit on Your Grave, I Dismember Mama, and Snuff, all in one night in 1976. In 1991, he sold his drive-in to a theater chain and used the money to make this movie, produced and filmed in Spokane with an all-local crew. This debuted at the Newport Cinemas, built over the drive-in the Hefner once owned 4 years after it was filmed. Ralph, Amy, Jeannie, and Steve Jessup are stuck. Ralph can't find a job and is angry that he has to live with his father and have his wife make the money. Then Amy learns that their church needs a caretaker, which gives Ralph something to do other than have flashbacks to Vietnam. But then he hits Dan Markham with his van. Markham had just run away from a mental hospital after years of care after he had killed his family in the same church where the Jessups live now, and his spirit will not leave Dan alone. So yes, does this sound like The Shining with the axe and caretaker parts? Yes. But what Hefner made is so strange that it begs to be seen. Ralph and Amy seem ready to kill each other at any moment, while Jeannie hurts her legs in an accident that her mother forces her to get past, and when she finally gets over it, prepares to go on a date, the ghost of Markham chains her leg and forcibly spreads them apart. It's a fully closed scene, but it feels like a violation. Her trauma's not ignored, and this all happens while a strange monkey toy with symbols goes nuts. It's terrifying. Steve seems codependent on his dad. At times, they seem like the only two people in this movie that care about each other, and other times, Ralph is abusing him. This all ends with the child trapped in his room as a low-budget version of Gozer mauls him, and Ralph can't figure out how to break a glass window. Who has a glass window going into their bedroom? And who lit this scene? The door is a giant glass door is what I'm saying. The fog and pink lights inside, it makes it look awesome, unlike other parts. Speaking of family issues, the actress who played Jeannie, who is Jennifer Salmi, her father Albert, who appeared in Caddyshack, Superstition, and Empire of the Ants, was served with divorce papers and a restraining order from his wife Roberta. Suffering from clinical depression and alcoholism, he went to her house anyway and shot her before killing himself. This also has a baptism pool being confused for a swimming pool or a jacuzzi. Explorations of the haunted church, burning baby dolls, and a date scene in a movie theater that has no dialogue and seems to go out forever while farting synth plays. Also, as you watch the scene, you'll be amazed that none of the movie theater workers wear gloves. They just are bare-handing popcorn. No one cared in 1987 when this was made about germs. Well, maybe Amy does. Ralph gets into bed covered with maggots and acts like it's no big deal, and rightly she goes nuts screaming at him, and he follows that up by having his son get hit by a car, which is bad guy karma. There's also a scene where someone gets into a tub filled with snakes in so many poems. Hefner couldn't get anyone to pick this movie up. He would have in the early 80s, as no one would seem to care that film stock changes and it appears like parts are shot on video, but in 87, no, sadly, he kept all the VHS copies in the church. He bought to film this in along with his camera equipment, and that all went up in flames in 2017. Before that, he shot a few other movies. Shooting Grunts is a autobiographical movie of how he was a combat photographer and was seriously wounded at the Battle of Khe Sanh. There's also 2008's Bad Ghost. I can't find a copy of this. If you can find one, send it to me, please. It seems like a re-edit of The Ghosting with most of the same cast. Salmi is Jeannie. Keith Lee Morris is her boyfriend. Crazy Dan is in it, the same evil Dan. Edna Caldwell plays Edna's wife, a character not in the original movie. The one photo on IMDb of the film of Salmi was a little bit older than she was in The Ghosting. I'm not saying that that The Ghosting is a good movie, but if you know the kind of things that obsess me, you know that I loved it, and I will probably force you to watch it. And thanks to the Schlock Pit, who had a ton of info on this movie. Up next is physical media. And there's a difference between physical media and watching a movie on streaming. Streaming does not have a menu that has animated mouse and all the characters singing the theme song like Kung Fu Rascals, which just came out from Visual Vengeance. It was directed by Steve Wang, who also made the Guyver, Drive, Guyver Dark Hero, Sirens of the Deep, and episodes of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. He has also worked on the FX for movies like The Monster Squad, Predator, Deep Star 6, Gremlins 2, Arena, The Underworld films, and many more. He also worked with Troy Froman and Johnny Seiko, and as he played a role in the Super 8 trailer that led to this movie, he ended up acting in it as Chow Chow Mein. He and his friends Leo Z and Repo have to stop Darling the Bamboo Man from destroying their village. Just like a Sentai show, Bamboo Man, played by Ted Smith, sits in a throne room and orders around his underling, Rasputin, let me say it again, Rasputin the Mad Monk. Yes, Rasputin mixed with mutant. Rasputin the Mad Monk, played by Whiteweed. Then they set out new monsters and ninjas to fight our three heroes. As for the evil sheriff, that is Lace Claypool III, which is not the guy from Primus, but the guy who wrote the music for Guyver, Dark Hero, and an Imperial Torture Master. The bad guys are really bad, the good guys are really good. The humor is fart and poop humor. It's awesome. $43,000 has never been better spent than it was in the making of this movie, one that closes with giant stone monsters fighting on a beach. Hey, do those frogs look like they came from Hell Comes to Frogtown? Yes, because Wang stole them after he did the effects. In a perfect world, they would have made 10 Kung Fu Rascals. You ever been forced to have a play date with some kid and you don't want to hang out with another kid and because their mom works with your mom, but then you go to their house and they have all these action figures, including ones you don't have, and they understand everything about G.I. Joe or He-Man, and they know the motivations and you have a great time playing with them. Well, that's how this movie feels. You can get Kung Fu Rascals at MVD or MVDshop.com or Diabolic DVD. And Visual Vengeance included a ton of stuff. This has a comic book. It's got a poster. It's got stickers. It's got the original Kung Fu Rascals Super 8. It's got some other Steve Wang movies. It's got commentary tracks. It's amazing. And it's a really fun movie. I 100% recommend it.
So much paralyzing terror as in this hair-raising orgy of sadism, influenced by the shocking writings of the evil, depraved Marquis de Sade. Bloody Pit of Horror. Starring Mickey Hargitay as the Crimson Executioner. They come to photograph seductive models against a medieval background and find themselves helplessly trapped in a castle of horrors.
Susie! What?
At the mercy of the twisted perversions of a madman who satisfies his lust by torturing his victims with the bone-breaking rack, the razor-sharp swords, the scalding, boiling oil, the deadly spider web. These and other fiendish torments make Bloody Pit of Horror one of the most terrifying films ever made.
1960s is the next theme, and Bloody Pit of Horror is the next movie. Mickey Hargitay had a life. In the first 20 years of it, he was part of an acrobatic act with his brothers, a champion speed skater, a soccer player, and a resistance fighter during World War II. He made it to America and settled in Cleveland, working as a plumber and carpenter, married Mary Burge, and started a new acrobatic act with her before being inspired by Steve Reeves and going into weightlifting, becoming a pinup model, and then part of Mae West's crew of hunky, muscular men. Jane Mansfield saw him perform with West and said to her waiter,
"I'll have a steak and that tall man on the left."
They got together and he used his building skills to build the pink palace for her, including a heart-shaped swimming pool, and they had 3 kids together, Miklos, Zoltan, and most famously Mariska, who has been on Law & Order Special Victims Unit forever. Jane demanded that Mickey be in her movies, and she had enough power to make that happen. After a few films, he started appearing in Italian movies on his own, like Revenge of the Gladiators, Sheriff Won't Shoot, 3 Bullets for Ringo, Black Magic Rights, an amazing movie, Delirium, and many more. However, Mickey said when he made this movie, he wasn't any more of an accomplished actor than a taxi driver. He's being kind. He has amazing First off, I have no idea if American audiences will get the idea of this movie. A horror magazine is shooting photos for the story. Italian audiences would know that this is a fumetti, a photo romanzi, or a fumetti neri, as one of the characters wears a costume like criminal at one point. It's a photo comic book that often did horror stories. Publisher Daniel Parks, Alfredo Rizzo, has brought his whole team. Writer Rick, Secretary Edith, photographer Dermot, assistants Perry and Raul, and models Susie, Annie, and Kinojo, who is from Hawaii, are trying to find a perfect castle to shoot a murder in. They find one that appears just like their wildest nightmares, and Perry has to climb into it after no one answers his knocks. Why would you just jump into someone's castle? But this is an Italian gothic horror movie after all. They're soon caught by the striped shirt wearing henchman of the castle's owner, Travis Anderson, who's played by Mickey. He demands that they leave until he sees Edith, who in a movie coincidence used to be his fiancée when he was a movie actor. Everyone can stay for the night, but must leave in the morning, and the dungeons, where the Crimson Executioner killed innumerable people, was put to death inside his own Iron Maiden, are forbidden. So the first thing the crew does is go down there and start taking pictures. They disturb the seal of the Crimson Executioner, and that's when the bad guy loses his mind. He puts on a pro wrestling outfit and starts screaming things like, "Mankind is made up of inferior creatures, spiritually and physically deformed, who would have corrupted the harmony of my perfect body." And then that's really Anthony LaPena's voice, but it's Hargitay doing the wild gestures. Then he goes for it. He's killing people in magically lunatic ways, like a gigantic spider web and then obviously fake spider that's rigged up to shoot arrows at anyone that touches the screen, ladling boiling water onto women's backs, and having a poison death massive machine called the Lover of Death. All the while he's flipping out and cutting promos on everyone who came into his home and ruined the time he has made to escape the world, oil up his body, flex in front of his mirror, and spend time with his identically dressed, muscular, hunky servants. Filmed in Psychovision, this was directed by Massimo Pupolo, who did Terror Creatures from the Grave and Lady Morgan's Vengeance, using the name Max Hunter. The script was by Romano Migliorini and Roberta Natali, who also wrote Lisa and the Devil. A nascent slasher at the end of the Italian Gothic cycle that looks as pop art colorful as a giallo and has all the lurid BDSM promise of those police black and white magazines they used to have that were pervier than any hardcore porn because they can't show it all, so they go demented, like having spinning knives, cut off bras, and slowly reveal nipples, all with jazzy music by Gino Piguri and incredible cinematography by Luciano Trissati. This movie's got it all. And it was shot at Ballasora Castle, a place that has seen so many scummy movies for how gorgeous it is. Imagine if you were the rich nobleman who owned this castle and you could look forward into history and know that movies like Sister Emmanuel, Lady Frankenstein, The Devil's Wedding Night, The Licorice Quartet, Ator the Blade Master, Crypt of the Vampire, Black Magic Rites, The Bloodsucker Leads the Dance, Baby Love, Medilo di Vallo te nudo mio inferno, Seyo Fantasma nel mio letto, Lady Barbara, Seven Golden Women against 2007, Treasure Hunt, Falfalin, and Pensiero d'Amore would all be shot inside your castle. You can get this from Severin. 100% recommend that you get this from Severin. The transfer is amazing. I love Bloody Pit of Horror so much. Australia is the next place we're going to, and that's for Night of Fear. Terry Bork both made this and Into the Dam. Terry Bork made both this and Into the Dam for the Fright TV show, but there's no way either could air on TV. He also made Ladies Stay Dead. A girl riding a horse stops to take a break, and a man unties her steed, and it runs away. As she chases it, he attacks her and locks her in her home as the credits play, giving a brief fast forward of the evils that we're about to see. Another woman finds herself going off the road and trapped in a dead end. That same man sees her and smashes her windshield with a shovel and chases her, again forcing her to her home where he peels nude with a bloody skull over his penis. He then pulls a lever, and a rain of rats comes down on her and which excites him to the point that he starts to get off as he watches her die, and that's it. An hour of a chase and a horrifying ending with no punishments. This feels like the Sawyer Clan, but was made a few years before Tobe Hooper's movie was shot nearly a world away. There's no dialogue, no names, and a movie that almost didn't make it into theaters because of censors, and this is how Australian exploitation got its start. And that's it. We're at Blood Frenzy, which is a movie that is in memoriam. It is in memoriam for Wednesday Addams herself, Lisa Loring. The pedigree of this movie, let me explain it to you. It was based on a story by Ray Dennis Steckler called Warning No Trespassing. It was scripted by Ted Newsom, who did Evil Spawn and Time Tracers, and directed and produced by Hal Friedman, who made all of his money from adult films like Sex Rank, Radio K, KUM, and the Caught From Behind series. He wanted to go mainstream, so he paid for all this for himself. And there's a reason for this. 4 years earlier, as the conservative Reagan White House and Attorney General Edwin Meese started cracking down on pornography, they raided the set of Friedman's Caught From Behind 2. He was convicted of 5 counts of pandering, but was given probation. This took years to resolve up until 1988 and the Supreme Court. Friedman would die a year later, but this case that the religious right brought against him ended up legalizing pornography and eliminating any gray area. Then again, Roe v. Wade was a thing too. Look how that's been going. Anyways, Freeman's Hollywood Video started the mainstream Hollywood Family Video, and this was their first release. It begins with psychologist Dr. Barbara Shelley, Wendy McDonald, bring her patients together to the desert to try her confrontation therapy and get them to function as a group. Those patients are Vietnam vet Rick Carlson, played by Tony Montero, who is dealing with flashbacks. The sex-addicted Cassie, played by Lisa Savage. Crawford, John Clark, who is an alcoholic. Jean, Monica Silveria, who resists any attempt to be touched. Dory, Lisa Loring. At this point, she was married to porn star Jerry Butler and doing makeups on adult film sets as Maxine Factor. She also wrote Tracy's Big Trick, an adult film about how Tracy Lords made movies as an underage teen. She's a former fashion model and lesbian who hates everyone. And the even more hateful Dave, played by Hank Garrett, the foreman, inspired by Paul Kersey in Death Wish. Why does the doctor think she can control 6 mentally ill people in the middle of nowhere with no help? The first session ends up with Dave and Rick fighting each other, and by the next day, the RV's ruined. The radio doesn't have a microphone. All the food is destroyed and Dave is dead. One by one, each person finds a jack-in-the-box and they're killed. This movie is late to the slasher cycle and it looks shot on video. Other people have told me shot on film, maybe Super 8 or 16. It does not look like a high-quality shot film. This has some great gore, though, and the last few minutes really go for it. Speaking of going hard, Lisa Loring is a force of nature in this, R.I.P. She's screaming every line, and she ends up scoring one of the women in a scene that cuts before any sapphic action, making you wonder, was this really directed by a man who went to jail for the sins of the adult industry? There was one other Hollywood Family release, and it's Earthquake Survival, which is written by Newsom and Brink Stevens, and directed by Freeman, who signed a certificate you could be proud of if you watched it. That's right, a porn director, the writer of Evil Spawn, and Brink Stevens made an Earthquake Survival video sold exclusively at Save On Grocery Stores in California, hosted by Shelley Duvall.
Hello, my name is Hal Freeman, as the president of Hollywood Family Entertainment. I'd like to thank you for purchasing this video. I think it will provide you with information crucial to your safety during a major earthquake.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. As a professional in the entertainment industry, I've chosen to make my home in California. Like any choice, there are benefits and drawbacks. The benefits are obvious: the wonderful climate, the beaches and mountains, and the fact that my work is here. There are also drawbacks. One of them is California is earthquake country.
Anyways, that's the first 15 movies. We'll have a bunch more before the end of the month. I love Unsung Horrors. Check out their podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Lance and Eric are great. And you can check me out at bnsaboutmovies.com on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. You can watch the Drive-In Asylum double feature with Bill Van Ryn and me, as we do a different movie at 8 o'clock, and we do late movies sometimes at 11. Check out Groovy Doom for the schedule on your social medias. And that's it. Thanks for listening to this long episode.